Okay, so really quickly, this video is going to cover the most common oil leaks as well, and replacing those seals. I'm just showing here, I got everything blocked off. Any open-ended hoses, the transmission bell housing, it's all been covered for the duration of this project. I got the whole engine bay area cleaned up. I also went back and vacuumed up those leaves. Just got it cleaned up as best as I could. Just some basic engine bay, engine grease remover, whatever, and microfiber towel cloths. I ended up deciding not to do race pipes because I wanted to keep my vehicle compliant. But if you were to switch these out, wouldn't be road legal. But here's some pictures. You got 3 bolts on the mid pipes and 3 bolts on the headers. I also really quickly just used mothers back to black on all the plastic trim pieces that I took off that are visible. Just get the engine bay all nice and cleaned up. I also have some yellow accents on the exterior of the car, so I added some yellow accents in the engine bay as well. This is just a walk around, so you have there your thermostat and your water pump. This here is your power steering pump, which is connected to the timing chain. Here you have your PCV catch can. That big gear on the back there, that's your torque converter. There's your starter, if you were to replace that. Coming along to the passenger side front, that is the alternator, and then in behind there is the location of your oil cooler. So now we're moving on to a detailed guide on the water pump and thermostat replacement. So you got on your thermostat here, you got 5 bolts, 2 hoses, and a connector that all have to come off. Just a general rule of thumb, whenever you're putting new parts or new seals on the car, you just take its respective fluid and coat the seals and the O-rings. Any O-rings or seals that you see me, or on any parts that you're taking off on the vehicle, which will make more sense in the timing chain video, you got to replace all those. It's just good practice. You know, costs an extra 50-60 bucks, but it's a peace of mind.
Yo, there's a
So when you crack the thermostat from the water pump, be ready for some fluid to leak out. So yeah, that's it for that. Here, removing the tensioner. I'll post, or you'll see a diagram in a second here. And then you got 2 bolts holding in the alternator, 1 wire on the back and 1 connector. That wire has a cap on it, so you got to take that cap off, and then you can pry the alternator out of its housing, which will give us access to the oil cooler. So once you got that out, there's an aluminum plate being held in by 5 inverted triple head bolts. Take those out, and then there should be 4 screws, if I remember correctly, holding the oil cooler onto the engine block. So you got 2 coolant lines to disconnect there. I don't know why I leave that one on.
Just leave that one
So there's a
on.
total of 5 screws there. You can be ready for a bunch of oil to leak out. You can see here, just around the oil cooler, the amount of gunk that's been built up from 10 years of use. Those O-rings that we're going to be replacing are a common oil leak issue on these motors. So
Got the rag directing the flow of oil here.
this was a bitch to clean up.
It's coming out the back there.
So that's the idler pulley there. Just take that plastic cap off and then you can remove that. I think you need to remove it to get the proper clearance in there to take it out. So you see the 2 O-rings there, those need to be replaced. So in the meantime, I got the oil cooler cleaned up on the exterior, got all the gunk cleaned off, cleaned up the alternator, and then I cleaned up that whole area. So that gunk acts as an insulator, keeps the engine temps up or high.
Just make sure they're nice and seated evenly. And make sure that the 4 little tabs are pushed in.
You can see there that I coated them with oil.
Should be good to go. Make sure you reconnect the hoses before you put any screws in. After you install your coolant pump back on, place the O-rings, tighten these bolts down to 9 Newton meters. Tighten the 2 on the top to 46 Newton meters. These ones to 33. There's no trick to putting the alternator back on. Just time, patience, prying, put a rag up, hammer it in, whatever. These 2 bolts get torqued to 22 Newton meters. These 2 get torqued down to 9 foot-pounds. Putting the pulley back on, make sure the washer is on the back. Thrust washer's on the back of this bolt and the front here in this one. So the big bolt gets tightened to 55 Newton meters. It gets tightened to 22. And if you took the bolts off the crank pulley, that gets tightened to, I'll figure it out after. This one here also gets torqued down to 22 Newton meters. And just put the cab back on. Yes, so everything should be moving with no resistance. Should be moving nice and free. Except for this one.
Okay, so now we're moving on to the engine mounts. I lost a lot of the footage on the engine mounts, but basically in the wheel wells where the bolts are that mount the engine, there's going to be three bolts that you take out, which allows you to pull that bracket out, which then lets you take out the engine mounts. I replaced mine with the 034 Motorsport solid rubber mounts. These are the old ones. You can see it's ripped and all the oil had leaked out. These are the new ones. I messed up the bushings, so just ignore that. Really quickly going to cover the coils and spark plugs. You have to do this for the timing chain.
Straight out. Wiggle them. Be patient with them.
You don't need a special socket for the spark plugs. Just take them out and grab a magnet. So common oil leak number 2 is the oil filter housing. So we're going to be replacing the 3 seals related to that. So we're basically just going to take out more fuel lines inside the valley. We're just taking out the bolts.
Prepared for a metric fuck ton of gas. So these are 19 and 17. This is a 1714. After you're done letting the gas bleed, loosen these 3 bolts. Once you loosen those 3 bolts, take that out and remove this last bolt. Disconnect this vacuum line. This wire here was seized in there. I just gently pried it out with a flathead screwdriver. Couldn't get that vacuum line out, so I just zip tied my shit up. As you can see, we have a pretty clear view of the whole valley here.
So this is after I taken the intake manifold out, which is covered in the next video, part 4, for the intake carbon cleaning. So you have access to the fuel rail there on both sides. You need to replace that or upgrade it, whatever. I got the valley nice and cleaned up. And then we're going to move on to removing the oil filter housing. Guess I'm just showing you the bolts that we have to take out. That's actually on the other side. Any of the bolts that you see that are already out is just because I took the intake manifold out in the next video.
Just loosen this bolt here. And 1 triple head here. 1 there. And then you just got the one down in the valley. So you got the 1 gasket there. And the other one in there.
So to remove the radiator from the rad support, it's pretty straightforward. You got the 1 bolt there and a guide, and then there's one on the other side, which mine is broken, so I had to take my radiator out to fix all this plastic, and then it should just slide up from the top. There'll be like 2 bushings on the top you have to clear. The 3rd common oil leak is the rear main seal, so we're going to replace that while the motor's out.
Okay, replacing rear main seal is pretty easy. I basically just cut this inner rubber band with an X-Acto knife very carefully. And I took a pick like this, slipped it in, and hooked it on, and just pulled it out. Pretty straightforward. Took about 10-15 minutes of trying. So this ring here, it's an L ring. It comes with the install tool. If you don't have one of these, you can just use a McDonald's cup and cut it down. So all the surfaces have been coated in oil. This side, all along there, where the lip is, on the lip on the rear main seal, as well as the crank here. Everything's been, all the contact surfaces are covered in oil. So once you got it in, just a little bit, just come around and make sure the lip isn't binding. It's not rolling back in on itself. And then just push it in so it's flush with the crank. Then take the old ring on and hammer it down a little bit. And you're basically just going till the rubber and this case here are nice and flush. Okay, so run your finger over it, make sure everything is nice, flush, clean it up nice, clean all the oil off, you're good to go. Remember, this plate goes on first, onto the engine, then that goes on.
So one last thing to cover is putting seafoam into your oil like 200 kilometers before you do your oil change. It goes by weight. It's a certain weight to the amount of liters in your engine, so read the back and measure it out.
Okay, ma. Ok, I'm glad I got you. Okay. Yeah, sono parlato con Marco, yeah. Maybe 10 minuti prima che...
So once you got it measured out, you just add it straight to the to your oil. let it run for like 200 kilometers, I think. I can't remember. I do this once a season. I know people that do it every oil change. I'm a little skeptical about it, but they swear by it, so you can ignore my breathing there. I don't know why I'm having trouble breathing. Yeah, then you just start the motor up, drive it around, and do your oil change. Cleans out all the carbon on the inside. That's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you got use out of this video, consider giving it a thumbs up. It only takes a second, and it supports me a lot. So, see you in the next video for the carbon cleaning.